us, and I am just going to start off with our relationship to land. I feel that it is important for us not to just say the land acknowledgement like it's a routine thing that we do, but to actually ground ourselves. What is our relationship to land? How do we feel when we conceptualize land and think about land, right? So we are going to start our presentation off with that today, and then I'm going to hand it over to Anika to set the background and the context, and then it will be back to me, and then back and forth, right? We're going to have fun. Our relationship and connection to land is ambiguous. On one hand, I love, respect, and appreciate land. Yet, on the other hand, I hate it. So here I stand full of mixed emotions as I must articulate my relationship with land. It is a difficult thing to stand between two spaces, between two thoughts. So this is my reflection, or by extension, our reflection and relationship with land. When we think deeply of land, we think of our ancestors being stolen to labor on land. It was land that brought them here to steal, to kill, and to destroy. It was their greed for land that caused the enslavement of my ancestors and the genocide of many other marginalized groups. It was because of land we had and continue to have segregation. And yet, in all of that darkness, land also brings liberation, resistance, comfort, and nourishment. So as we stand in this ambiguity, or as a colleague of mine reminded me, a pedagogy of discomfort, we think about the in-between spaces where we, in the name of capitalism, continue to rape land, without thinking of the devastation we continue to cause to human and non-human beings alike. So today, as we grapple with our topic of exploration, we want you to also grapple with your personal positionality as it relates truly to the preservation of land. I now hand it over to Anika.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Always after the land acknowledgement, especially on a panel of just Black women, I think about, it causes me to be in deep reflection, and I think like, maybe that's the presentation.
That's it. We're done.
But it's not today. It's not today. I think the introduction was well done, but what I would like to say is for all of us here on this panel, this work is not just simply research for us. It's a reflection of some of our experiences, our loved ones, our children, and so we're closely connected to the work that we do, closely connected and invested in hoping to create and inform a different future for our loved ones and by extension beyond that. So today we'll be sharing preliminary findings from a 3-year study which explores the experiences of Black students navigating their post-secondary education, specifically focusing on students who have navigated the college to university or university to college pathways, so that transfer process. But before we talk about these preliminary findings, as well as theoretical frameworks employed, I'd like to provide a bit of context and background, as my colleague Sonia had already mentioned. So, the everyday experiences of Black students in Canadian universities is not well documented or widely available. Currently, much of our understanding about Black students' experiences in university has been extracted from the US, while Canada continues to make progress in collecting and generating evidence relating to the experience of Black students across all levels of educational institutions. Additional research is warranted. if our aim is to inform and foster learning environments that both encourage and support Black students' academic success and ambitions. While the experiences of Black students is not well documented in Canada, we do know that the Black student experience is different and is a different education than that of their white and racialized peers. As recent as 2021, an article published by Dr. Carl James and Gillian Parekh noted that when compared to South Asian, East Asian, and white students, Black students are less likely to graduate, and the findings pointed to the systemic factors such as secondary school program of study, arriving to university via an indirect pathway, and parents' level of education. They go on to say that these legacy factors are still significant predictors of who graduates. So, in thinking about this, we can see how one student's assertion from our findings with feeling like a small fish in a big pond in university is not unique to the one Black student who shared this experience, nor is it an anomaly. We as a research collective are acutely aware of the fact that Black youth under the age of 29 represent a significant proportion of the Black population here in Canada. In fact, it's 26% as of StatsCan 2020. And therefore, we must reckon with this reality by working with and centering the voices and experiences of Black students so as to address and understand the persistent gap that exists between Black youth ambitions and their achievements in relation to the systems in which they are part of and contribute to. So, as a response to that, to what we do know about the experiences of Black students, like what was just shared, the Jean Augustine Chair has been exploring these experiences with students from high school into their post-secondary education and into the workplace. As part of a larger national initiative titled Securing Black Futures, we at the Chair have engaged approximately 200 high school students and 85 post-secondary students to not only provide opportunities to connect, engage, explore, and be supported through their decision-making processes related to their education and career ambitions, but also have been documenting these experiences and centering their voices and understanding more about their everyday lives. As such, what we are hoping to do, or what we've done in terms of exploring some of these questions, we're focusing the conversation today on a group of 25 of this subset. So it's a subset of 25 from the larger program who have transferred or who have identified that they have transferred from college to university or vice versa. And so the questions are, that we'll talk about today are, what are the factors that influence the decision-making of Black students to pursue college or university? What might have influenced Black students' decisions to transfer from university to college, to pursue a degree or diploma program, or pursue university before or after completing college? And what role do early decisions of Black students play in their mobility in their post-high school years, university, college, and the workplace? And lastly, the last two questions, how does race and other social identity factors play a role in students' decision-making processes? Ultimately, we're looking at who's moving and why, and how are they doing this? So to answer these questions, I'm going to spend a few minutes just situating today's conversation, specifically on decision-making of Black students transferring in the broader ecosystem of decision-making and pathways. So it's busy, right? It looks confusing. It should. We'll spend some time looking at the messiness of these pathways and why they are taken, navigated, and by whom and how. So what are the factors that influence the decision-making of Black students to pursue college or university? We acknowledge the role that the earlier years of influence, particularly in the high school years, has on pathways and trajectories. What you see here in the model that's being developed is there's academic, applied, and locally developed pathways, and all of these lines going to different places here that you see. For example, let's look at applied for a moment. A student might have taken applied, and while we know there's not streaming, students are still being streamed in other ways, but that's not the focus of the conversation. So an applied student might go straight to university. There are there is a how they can do that. There are mechanisms or things that they can do there to go to university, directly to college or to the workplace, and then there's even transferring in between those spaces. So you do see the arrows are multi-directional there. However, irrespective of the starting point, which I just outlined, academic, applied, or locally developed, or not at all completing high school, what we can say is that there is no shortage, for the research we've done for high school students specifically, is that there is no shortage of ambition or aspiration in the high school years for Black students. In fact, of the high school students we've engaged in the GTA, which is just under 200 students from grades 7 to 12, 86% of those students plan at least a complete university degree. And of that 86%, 22% want to get a medical degree or law degree. 85% of these students said that college or university was moderately to very important for their future. Only 2% said that it was of low importance or not at all important. 85% of these students also said that they believe that they can achieve their desired level of education. So with this in mind, we must think about why Black students are not completing their post-secondary education at the same rate as their non-racialized peers. Who are the students? Who are they? Why are they transferring? Why are they taking these non-linear paths, and how are they doing that? Similar to findings of other studies, this study explores educational, occupational, and career paths and the ways in which, or the extent to which, peers and parents, or peers versus parents, influence or shape their educational ambitions and decisions of Black students. Of particular interest to us is the extent to which generational status meaning first, second, or third generation, how long you've been in Canada, differences play a role in the educational, occupational, and career expectations, ambitions, and outcomes. The connection between those initial streams are critical for us to understand decision-making, as well as the experiences that students have in college and or university when they get there. So before I hand it over to my colleague Sonia, I would like to share a quote from a student, particularly, again, just centering the student group that experienced or noted that they've done college to university transfers or vice versa, where he shares quite well his experience in terms of decision-making for college or university. So I'm going to read the quote from him. In response to his decision-making around pursuing college first and then transferring to university, he says, "It has to go even more back to elementary school. My fate, they tried to give me a fate from grade 5, because in grade 5 I had a speech impediment and they put me in a special education program from grade 5. So I wasn't sure how to, special education from grade 5. And when you go to grade 8 and 9, they write on your academic report or whatever, this person should be recommended for the applied track. So from grade 5, I had no chance to get into the academic track in high school. Therefore, putting me on the track to college from grade 5, I was 10 years old, right? So that was the case for when I was 5, in grade 5. Again, in grade 5 was put in special education. I was in the ESL class, and even though I was born in Canada and then going to high school, I never had a chance. I never had the option to go to academic. I had to stay in the college track, so therefore it was never an opportunity for me to go to university directly from high school. By listening to and documenting and centering experiences such as these, we may come to rethink how we approach student transfers when Black students are in post-secondary, as these decisions are often happening earlier on and then shaped by experiences once they have attended these spaces, as my colleagues will elaborate on. While the scope of this particular research was focused on Black student transfers and decision-making, I hope that this background provides context for the discussion to be had. As we think about challenging the structures that were not created for Black and racialized bodies at the onset, we can think about developing interventions and supports for Black students that are in line with their experiences and systems that they are operating within, as we do as part of the work we do with the Jean Augustine Chair and community. In doing so, we may also come to revisit the approaches taken to best prepare, equip, and support Black students pursuing post-secondary education and their pathways. in particular, student insights from programs where Black students are the minority not only inform and shape programming and activities to support them, but also the policies, practices, systems, and environments that Black students are part of. Whilst this is just one reflection from a student within the transfer student cohort, we have all been challenging our assumptions on what might be best for Black students as we focus on listening, learning, and engaging with these students from their perspectives and lived experiences. So with that said, I'll hand it over to my colleague Sonia now to talk and share more on the theoretical framings of our research and begin with the discussion on our preliminary findings with my colleague, Kisha, Dr. Kisha McPherson.
So I'm going to start with a theoretical frame and methodology, and then just go into the summary of our findings and just bring out some of the key themes that we found. So we ground this project within an intersectional frame of critical race theory and critical feminist theory, as they provide a lens from which to examine the ways in which race, class, gender, and generational status intersects with systemic barriers to ultimately impact Black students' decision-making and experiences as they transition from high school to post-secondary spaces, as well as between post-secondary pathways. These intersecting frames provide an apparatus from which to analyze and highlight findings that are rooted in the knowledge, experiences, and lived realities of Black students, while exploring how historical, political, social, and economic forces interacts and intersects to shape Black students' social realities, their social locations, and their social intersections within educational spaces. For instance, by embedding Black students' experiences within these intersecting frames, we're able to understand the symbiotic nature of their diverse identities and how they intersect with different forms of oppression to mediate their academic and career aspirations. Likewise, these frames provide us with a conduit through which to explore, identify, investigate, and interrogate, and also alter the dominant ideologies which prevents equitable outcomes for Black students, as well as foster spaces where their unique voices can be heard. For our research, data was drawn from 25 self-identified Black students, former and current, between the ages of 19 and 40, who had transferred from college to university and or university to college within the last 10 years, and were either first or second generation Black students or Black Canadian students. We used semi-structured interviews and focus group discussion to gather data, and we analyze our data using Deduce, an analytical tool for mixed method research. It is important for me to note on the onset that the names that I will be mentioning are fictitious, so don't go looking for them. Okay. The data suggests that Black students experience a myriad of challenges as they navigate post-secondary spaces in order to attain their career aspiration. The research reveals that the genesis of Black students' transfer, as was discussed by Anika, between university and college, or college and university, really has its root in their initial transfer from high school, which is predominantly influenced by three factors: their parents, their peers, and educators, specifically guidance counselors. As such, it is important for parents, educators, and students to be aware of the complexities which exist within each pathways: the academic, the applied, or the locally developed. Or we can pretend now that that doesn't exist. Because there are implications for their success within post-secondary spaces. For instance, Black students who took the high school to university pathway, which is the academic, experienced the most challenges. They voiced that they felt academically unprepared, coupled with feelings of being targeted, isolated, excluded, and alienated, at times invisible from the educational terrain, which ultimately led to feelings of inferiority, depression, anxiety, and impacting their mental health. Conversely, students who took the high school to college pathway experienced the most success, and I put that in quote because their experiences within the college pathway that was in the findings that was not met with such success. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. They express feelings of inclusion, sense of belonging, academic efficiency, and feelings of empowerment. Likewise, students who took the high school to workplace pathways were able to enter the labor market and returned as mature students through the college stream, as they felt that the pathway to university was not open for them because they came through the workplace. They came as mature students, they can find their way to college, but not university. But ultimately, from college, they did make their way to university. Right? So I just wanted to point that out. They articulate that being in the working environment provided them with the lens to understand the value of acquiring post-secondary credentials. Thus, when they returned, they were determined and prepared to maneuver the challenges they experienced within post-secondary settings. It is these initial pathways from high school to post-secondary that forms the foundation of Black students' experiences and ultimately led to their decision to transfer between pathways, whether it be university to college, college to university, work to college, then university, or college to work, and then university. And you might be wondering why there are so many pathways that I'm talking about. Because there is no direct pathways. There is no just academic to university, and then you graduate. Some of the students voice that although they went to university and graduated with a degree, they weren't able to get any job in their field, so they had to go back to college to gain practical experiences. And it just keeps going in that circle. So then we have to ask then, how are these pathways meaningful to Black students? Right? So I am going to talk about their experiences now within the post-secondary space. I want to ground this part of the findings in a quote, because I spoke about what are the influencing factors that really push them towards post-secondary. And first, it is parent. Second, it is peers. And third, it is educators. The student said, "My dad, coming from his culture, there is no coming out of high school and not going to post-secondary. There is no option, right? There's no choice. You must go." The study reveals that parental involvement and educational expectations had significantly, in fact, influenced the pathways Black students choose to navigate as they transition from high school to post-secondary. According to the participants, the pursuit of post-secondary studies was not an option for them. In fact, it was the expectation. They voiced that although their parents at times did not understand the complexities embedded within these pathways or were not able to navigate the intricacies of the educational system, they act as advocates for their children in an attempt to ensure that these pathways remained open and viable. It is important to note that more than half of the participants voiced that their parents expected them to choose the academic pathway, as they believed that this pathway would improve the student's social status, provide more opportunities for upward mobility, and it holds more prestige within society and the Black community as a whole. Peer groups also emerged as an influencing factor as Black students prepared to transition from high school to post-secondary. The study suggests that peer groups not only influence the student's choice in regards to program of study, but the institution they decide to attend. Likewise, the participants assert that their peers frequently act as systems of support while providing a space where they can actively think about, discuss, and prepare for post-secondary. Educators' perception and expectation was another factor that influenced Black students' decisions as they transitioned from high school to post-secondary. The study suggests that educators, such as guidance counselors, often hold inferior perceptions and low expectations of Black students. And it is these low expectations and perception that asks them or causes them to push Black students within the applied and the workplace pathways. There were a few students that they were doing academic courses, but their guidance counselors forced them or suggested that they went to the college stream, and that's how they ended up within the college stream. Black students, irrespective of their academic aptitude, according to the participants, these perceptions and expectations were often used by educators to determine their social and academic intelligence. For example, many of the participants voiced that they were frequently advised by their guidance counselors who perceived them as incapable of attaining academic success within the academic pathways to pursue the applied or locally developed pathways, which when considering their post-secondary aspirations and career outcomes. It was the aforementioned three factors that predominantly influenced and or motivated Black students' initial decision as they transitioned from high school to post-secondary. So those were the initial factors that grounded their decision to go whether to college, the workplace, or university. So now let's look at their experiences as they're within the university setting. The study reveals that regardless of their transitional pathways, Black students must maneuver a plethora of challenges which are grounded in systemic racism and sexism during their post-secondary careers. For example, the data suggests that Black students experience systemic barriers such as negative perception, think back in high school, now we're in post-secondary, and low expectations, feelings of isolation, alienation, and exclusion as they navigate their academic pathways. It is this symbiotic nature of these barriers which ultimately leads to their decision to transfer across pathways. The study reveals that Black students who had taken the academic pathway often found themselves proving to faculty and peers that they are not academically or socially inferior. According to the participants, these perceptions and expectations were often the basis of their interactions within university spaces. For example, Jaden voiced that, I felt like as a Black student, I had to prove to certain faculty, teaching assistants, and classmates that I wasn't lazy, that I was interested, in the work. I had to give them a way to see me that was different from the stereotypes because they might categorize me based on skin tone, which has really nothing to do with my abilities. I just felt like I had to always prove myself. So when we think about Black students within that context, being in a university space and you must always prove yourself that you belong, always negate the stereotype, dismiss them, that does create that feeling of, I don't belong here. You don't want me here. I'm excluded from this space. I'm alienated from this space. And it is those feelings that ultimately lead to their decision to transfer to the college spaces. They also voiced that the makeup of university spaces, such as the large lecture halls, which makes it difficult to formulate meaningful relationships with faculty and peers, course contents which are often placed within the context of whiteness, or little or no Black faculties or teaching assistants, and no programs that specifically target and or support the unique and diverse needs of Black students also leads them to transfer. It is this feeling of exclusion, coupled with systemic racism and sexism, which drives Black students to transfer. The above is evident by Tanya's comment. University is also something that is very stressful for a lot of Black students, she voiced. A lot of students, unfortunately, commit suicide because that's just the atmosphere that they built. That's the culture they built. Now, when students are voicing these feelings, being in these spaces, it is no wonder that they want to transfer or they want to drop out. We have to think of how do we create spaces for Black students to feel that sense of belonging, to feel that sense of inclusion, right? And then think about their mental health. Who is there to support that mental health, their needs? When we spoke to these students, they voiced that there was no one really there to support that aspect of their overall well-being. And even if there was one Black person, it's just one Black person for a multitude of Black students. That is not effective, right? I'm just going to quickly wrap up with the college experience, that sense of belonging. So despite all the challenges, the college setting seemed to have something that is feasible for Black students. They voiced that the smaller class sizes, they voiced the cohort style of learning, where they start with one set of students from the first year and they continue with those set of students until fourth or second year, depending if it's a degree or a diploma. That gave them that sense of belonging, that they saw themselves reflected in the faculty members at the colleges. They voiced that they saw themselves reflected in their peers. They shared the same interests, and they were able to build that community. They voiced that they had people that they could speak to about whatever challenges that they were feeling. And they voiced something that I thought was really important for post-secondary faculties or admin to know, that their sense of mentorship is not what the university or the college provides. Their sense of mentorship comes not with an academic lens or through an academic lens, but through someone being there that has already navigated that space and understand their lived reality and offer advice. Maybe how to study or just ears to listen about what was happening. That was that mentorship that they were looking for, or a space where they can find themselves and have meaningful conversation. So then the implications of all of this is, how do we effectively address the needs of Black students? And it is not just within the post-secondary space. We have to begin within the high school spaces. How do we equip them to have that purpose that when they step into post-secondary spaces, particularly the university spaces, they feel that they're prepared? Because there seems to be a disconnect with what is expected in grade 12 to ground them with the expectation in first year university. There is that broad disconnect. So how do we build those gaps? How do we build those meaningful relationships? And how do we foster that sense of belonging where Black students can thrive? Because it's not that they don't have the criteria. We can clearly see that they have the criteria to succeed. They have made it to post-secondary. But it is the way that they're treated once they're in post-secondary that causes them to transfer.
So I'll just quickly summarize the research. Thanks so much to Sonia and Anika for just providing a summary of the study. So, and this study is really important to me as a professor and scholar, just because I had 14 years teaching at Centennial College before I went to TNU. So I know I have a clear understanding of what students, especially Black students, are experiencing in these spaces. So just to summarize some of what we discussed here, The research that we've laid out here is a subset of 25 students that we were able to pull in as participants in the research, the focus groups, and the different methods of gathering this data. And so what we've been able to do is to theme that data in a way that we're able to clearly identify some of those barriers and blocks. And I wanted to sort of speak to the point in reference to guidance counselors in high school and how they sort of have the influence, or they influence students to sort of go into directions that don't necessarily get them to university. Now, whether it's college or university, we're looking at post-secondary experiences that are positive for Black youth so that they're able to use those experiences to go and have successful careers, to do what they need to do to level up income status and sort of just have the life that everybody deserves in reference to what they can achieve. And so it's not as if it's not as if a college pathway is necessarily something that we don't necessarily want them to achieve. However, the school system is set up in a way that it makes it difficult for them to do either of those options, whether it's college, even apprenticeship programs, even if they're going to go into that. We're looking at how their success is then determined based on the color of their skin, based on some limited information that might be provided on their behavior or what they might have done in an academic setting at one particular time, and how that then becomes what follows them throughout their lives, and sort of what is the impact of that once they get to post-secondary age. So looking at low morale, disengagement. So when a guidance counselor, for example, tells you that you are not able to achieve something specific, it not only puts you into a position where you have to go into a lower stream, but it also causes that low morale. It disengages them from their education process. So there's a lot at play here psychologically, not just the physical or systemic way in which these students are being pushed into areas that are clearly not up to their potential, or that they're not living up to their potential. But we also have to look at that sort of the self-efficacy that's taken away. We have to also look at how that lowers self-esteem and just sort of creates this sequence or this cycle in which they then have to work so hard to come out of it. So the 25 young people that we were able to talk to that have gone through post-secondary was able to identify some of these barriers within the college and the university system. And it's important for us to do this research because we have systems that are inequitable and they seem to always fall at the feet of Black students. So we're always looking at what they're achieving as if they don't have the ability to achieve things, and we're not taking a real close look at the systematic or the institutions and the systemic inequities that are causing these barriers, that are causing the lack of achievement, as we would so often sort of categorize the experiences of these Black students. And so we're continuing to do this research, and a part of the Jean Augustine's Chair plan in reference to focusing on Black students across Canada, we hope to gather some more data. We also hope to speak with and engage with, or some of the projects that are underway, we'll engage with Black youth at a high school level so that we can begin to provide some of these supports, or at least sort of build the skills that they need in order to survive in some of these institutions, because some of those supports are not always there. And so I think with that, we will wrap up. So again, some of the research that we're focusing on is really, this particular project allows us to look at post-secondary students in terms of their experience that they've already had in these systems, but we are working with younger students who are currently in high school so that we can address some of these concerns. So it's not just research without action. I think what the Jean Augustine Chair is really trying to do is to ensure that we can be involved in some of the systemic change that is needed in order for these Black youth to succeed. Thank you so very much.